Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Bates. I'm president of the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we want to thank you for joining us today at our annual Small Business Person of the Year and Heritage Award Luncheon. First of all, I would like to have you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may please be seated. I'd like to thank our event sponsors today, First Financial Bank and Fort Hamilton Hospital. And once again, thank you all. And once again, thank you all for joining us today. Last year, I had the pleasure of meeting our speaker for today, and I can tell you that you are in for a very special treat. With over 20 years of forecasting experience, meteorologist John Gum can be seen Monday through Friday on the afternoon and evening newscasts on Local 12. A Cincinnati native, John returned home to work for WKRC-TV in 2005. Prior to coming to Local 12, John's career took him all across the country, allowing him to experience every type of weather imaginable. While in New Orleans, he won numerous awards for his work, including an Associated Press Award for Best Weathercast in Louisiana. When he's not forecasting, John enjoys spending time with his family, mountain biking, hiking, swimming, tinkering with electronics, and loves following the Reds, the Bengals, and FC Cincinnati. In his spare time, John also dabbles in app development. With that, please welcome John Gum. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. Great to be here with you guys this afternoon. I was just telling Dan a little while ago, I live in northern Kentucky, but I find myself this time of the year, in the fall and in the spring, constantly in Butler County because my 10-year-old daughter plays soccer. And we're always up here playing Butler County teams, so it's nice to be up here. I'll be up here this weekend, too. You might catch me out at Joyce Park or something. Always there, it seems like. It's great to be here. I really enjoy speaking with groups like this. You know, a lot of times when people see me, I'm doing weather on TV, or I'm out at a school. I visit lots of schools across the area. But it's nice to talk about something a little other than weather. And in this case today, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got to the position I'm in today and some of the lessons that I learned along the way. And I'm hopeful that some of this you'll find a little bit interesting. Now, to start this whole story, I'm not going to start at the beginning, I'm not going to start at the end. I'm going to kind of start in the middle, because the middle of this story really is what everything before then and since then has kind of hinged on. And it's kind of ironic that we're here on August 28th, because it was about 13 years ago that this story began. It was actually a year ago yesterday, August 27th, 2005. And I woke up that morning, the morning of August 27, 2005, with a sick feeling in my stomach, quite frankly. I was working in New Orleans, Louisiana, and we had a hurricane coming our way. And in that case, I'd been through hurricanes before. That meant packing your bag for a few days to stay at work for several days at a time. Now, if you know anything about New Orleans, you know it's not a city you want to be in when a hurricane hits. If you picture filling your kitchen sink up with water, filling it all the way up with water and taking a cereal bowl out of your cupboard and pushing that cereal bowl down in the water and stopping just before water enters that bowl, you have basically what New Orleans is. New Orleans sits at the bottom of that bowl. It has water to its south, the Gulf of Mexico, which is actually sitting above the city. It has water to its north, Lake Pontchartrain, which is actually sitting above many parts of the city. And you also have the Mississippi River. Every single drop of rainwater that falls in that city has to be pumped up and out of that city. There's a massive series of pumps. These are engineering marvels. They're called screw pumps. They were first developed in the early 1900s. That actually pump water out of that city to make that city a viable place to live. There's a series of underground canals that lead to canals that are above the surface of the city of New Orleans that actually collect rainwater. So when it rains, water enters the storm sewer system, and unlike here, just doesn't run off into the river. It runs into these massive canals where it then has to be pumped up and out to Lake Pontchartrain. Now, these pumps can move more water than the entire flow of the Ohio River. So these are massive, massive pumps. They're on generators. And a hurricane entering the city of New Orleans presents two serious problems. First, hurricanes push water. They push massive amounts of water as they come across the ocean. The second problem is these hurricanes produce torrential rainfall. And in the case of New Orleans, if that rainfall gets above 1 inch per hour in its rate, the streets start to fill with water. Now here in this area, just this summer, we've seen several storms come along that have produced a greater rate of rainfall than that. When that happens in New Orleans, slowly streets fill with water. Businesses begin to flood. It can happen in basic summertime thunderstorms, and it happens quite frequently. So obviously my anxiety was justified on that morning of the 27th with this hurricane approaching the city. But I have a job to do, so I went off to work, and when I arrived at the station, I began to analyze the massive amounts of data that we had coming in, and every single piece of data pointed to the fact that New Orleans was going to be in the crosshairs of this hurricane. This, of course, was Hurricane Katrina. And Hurricane Katrina came off, it went across the Florida Peninsula and came off way farther south than any of the numerical models had predicted. The interaction of the hurricane with land is an extremely complex process, so the models didn't really do a good job at handling that. Bottom line was, when it reemerged in the Gulf of Mexico, New Orleans set firmly in its crosshairs at that point, which just 36 hours ago didn't look like it would be the case. And what was worse, every other single piece of information we had suggested that this hurricane would intensify rapidly upon pushing out into the Gulf of Mexico. Hurricanes use warm ocean water as fuel, and in this case, the Gulf of Mexico was way warmer than normal for this time of the year, and that fuel was like high-octane gas for this hurricane to get stronger. And the atmosphere just presented perfect conditions for this thing to strengthen. So every piece of data showed a worst-case scenario for the city. The National Hurricane Center backed up what I was saying, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, I went on the air, and it was my job to go on television and quite frankly, do something that I'll never have to do in this area, and that's give people the worst possible information, the worst possible scenario that they could imagine. But delivering that news was just a small part of my job. You see, I had to convince them. I had to convince them that this was actually going to happen. Because in the past, in just the prior year, these major hurricanes had come up to the city of New Orleans and had turned at the last minute. So there had not been a major hurricane to hit this city since the 1960s. You had an entire generation of people in the world's most vulnerable hurricane city that had never experienced a hurricane before. So I had to convince them that this was really going to happen. So that brings me to my first lesson. I'm going to go through a series of things that I learned along the way here, and I hope some of this is helpful to you. A lot of you run businesses. How do you deliver bad information to your customer? It's not an easy thing. Of course, everyone that watches the news, everyone that downloads our app, everyone that ingests our digital forecasts, they're all my customers. And so this question went through my head before I even hit the air that morning. As I was driving into work, I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? Well, in this case, it was pretty simple. I simply just put myself in their shoes. I wanted to be as honest with them as possible about what was happening. I admitted what I didn't know. I told them what I knew, but I never speculated. I never sugarcoated things. And I was also empathetic to their situation. I understood that the feelings that they would have about getting this news would run the full gamut here, from disbelief to shock to anger to even fear, obviously. And I even addressed this, when I was on the air. I was clear, calm, and direct. Didn't use fancy science terms to talk over their heads. I didn't try to dazzle them with everything I knew. I wanted to deliver a clear, concise message. It was important to do so. And finally, and most importantly in this, I offered a clear solution to the problem. You had to evacuate. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That was the only solution to this problem. Easier said than done, obviously. Picture a metropolitan area nearly as big as this area, and you've got to evacuate it. That's hard to do. But anyway, I continued to broadcast 12 hours straight that day, delivering the same message, passing along the latest information. And it was just after 9:30 in the evening when I received a call. And this call would change everything. I'm going to the hospital. I think I'm in labor. I must have forgotten to mention my wife was 9 months pregnant when all this went down. Again, my anxiety was quite warranted at this point. That sick feeling in my stomach was for many reasons. Always been interested in weather. As a child, I remember the first time I even thought about the weather, actually. I was watching these huge towering cumulus clouds grow outside of my Anderson Township home, and I thought, how cool is that? And still to this day, I see that and I think, wow, that is just amazing. That is so cool. It wouldn't be long, though, until I started thinking about weather a little more. You see, I had an older cousin. His name was Donnie. Donnie lived on a farm out in northeastern Claremont County. He was a farm boy, a little different than me. I grew up in the suburbs. But we'd get together. Donnie was kind of wild, kind of rambunctious. And our moms were out shopping one day, and our grandfather was watching us. I think he was watching the Reds game, actually, at that time. And it was a typical summer day until the sky got dark, start to hear thunder. And Donnie, knowing that I was a little nervous when storms came along, proceeded to trick me into going outside and locked me outside of the house. So as the storm was bearing down on our house, I'm beating on the door, screaming to get back in. My grandfather was busy, watching the Reds, I guess, at that point, and didn't hear me for a little while. Finally, as the rain started to fall there, Donnie let me back into the house. And from this point on, I actually developed a pretty serious phobia as a kid. Astrophobia, you might have heard of it, fear of lightning and thunder. So at the first sign of any thunderstorm, I would go and lock myself into the bathroom and turn the water faucet on so I couldn't hear the thunder. That's how scared I was. But my grandfather and my parents, being the wise people they were, thought, okay, if he learns more about how weather works, maybe he won't be as scared of weather. So I did. They bought me books, read the books. I couldn't get enough information. And sure enough, the more I learned about weather, the less afraid I was. I mean, my young brain just could not get enough information about the atmosphere and about the science of meteorology. And it's kind of funny. Donnie, to this day, says that I owe him a commission on my earnings as a meteorologist. I tell him he owes me money for therapy after that whole thing. But that's kind of what started my interest in weather. So lesson 2, and this is just the first of many times this has happened in my life and maybe your life. It's funny, but our trials and our tribulations totally shape us. The tough times, the failures we have, the setbacks we have are preparing us for later success. And this is something I tell my kids all the time when something doesn't go their way. What if Donnie hadn't locked me out as that storm came? My career path may have not gone the way it went. So these things can shape us. Now, I had some questions at lunch. How does one become a meteorologist? Does everybody have the same degree? Well, no, and that's one of the things I want to talk about a little bit. When I was a kid, I knew if I wanted to become a meteorologist, I had to go to college. Got to go to college, you got to get a degree. But in my immediate family, that was virtually unheard of. And the question on my mind was, could I do this? Could I pull this off? Well, I'm not sure exactly who told me this, but as I was growing up during my elementary school years, I held the firm belief as a child that I had won the lottery by living in the United States of America, and I still believe that to this day. You know, I believe that anything is possible here. If there's something you want to do, something you want to be, you've got the opportunity to do so in this country as long as you really work hard and never ever give up. Now, as an adult, I know it's not quite that simple, because when I was a kid, I wanted to be the first National Weather Service meteorologist that would simultaneously play for the Reds and Bengals. That didn't quite work out. It didn't. I mean, I worked and worked and worked, but that part didn't quite work out. But that brings me to the next lesson I learned. I still hold the firm belief that this is the greatest country on the planet. The opportunities we have here are limitless and unparalleled. It's the one place you can be what you want to be, do what you want to do. You've got that opportunity in front of you. And when I visit schools, I tell the kids, listen, if you forget everything else I said today about weather, this is the thing I want you to know. So obviously it was with this firm belief that I set out to say, okay, I am going to be a meteorologist someday. And I decided this at the ripe old age of 8 years old. One of those rare people that decided I wanted to do something when I was really young and actually got to do it. So going on, there are many things that prepared me for doing this. And lesson number 4, and I come to that right now, and this is important too, is get out of your comfort zone. You guys might not believe me, but I'm not a great speaker in front of people. I could talk in front of the cameras all day. When I come out to events like this, I get a little nervous. I get a little anxious being up here in front of you today. I'll admit that. But you got to get out of your comfort zone. And that takes me back to a story. When I was in high school, my first real job was working at Beachmont Roll Arena out in Claremont County. And did whatever they asked me to do, put away skates, took tickets, helped sell stuff in the snack bar. Well, one day, the DJ was sick. And the manager came to me and said, hey, guess what? You get to be DJ today. You're going to go up there and talk and go over the rules and play music. I said, I don't want to do that. Are you crazy? I was such a shy kid, very introverted, wouldn't say anything. I was very quiet. He's like, no, you could do it. Go up there and do it. So I went up there. I was shaking, grabbing the microphone. Welcome to Beachmont Roll Arena, the place to skate in the tri-state. And I was going over my little list of rules, you know, no skating backwards, no skating fast. I was terrified. Well, during that time, as the afternoon went on, I felt a little better. He came up to me at the end of that and said, hey, I want you to do that again. Okay. Didn't really want to, but reluctantly agreed to it. So I did it again. I was the DJ again for another little session they had. Did it again, and again, and again. And in fact, I ended up doing that job for all 4 years I was in high school. And actually got pretty good at it and actually enjoyed it, even though that first step was terrifying. I had to get out of my comfort zone. But that experience actually planted the seeds for what I ultimately do today. And at that time, I didn't even know it. So get out of your comfort zone. Lesson 5, and this is another big one, have a vision. Have a goal. You know, you got to know where you're going to get there. And you got to take constant small steps to make that goal a reality. I knew in my young mind, if I wanted to be a meteorologist again, I had to go to college. The first step to doing that in my mind was, okay, I've got to do well in high school. I've got to get good grades. I've got to take as many high-level courses as I can, even though they were challenging. And, well, I did that, and I did pretty good. Now, the second hurdle here that I came across was, how was I going to finance college? I applied to several schools as I entered my senior year of high school, big state schools, smaller schools. I received an awesome scholarship from Xavier University that made it more affordable, and my parents were pushing me in that direction. Oh, you got this great scholarship to X, you got to go. Well, one problem, they didn't have a meteorology program. Not at all. Wanted me to be a physics major or something. wanted to be a physics major. So I persisted in eventually finding a small school that offered meteorology. It was called Valparaiso University. It's in northwestern Indiana outside of Chicago. And the problem with Valpo was it was even more expensive than Xavier, and they didn't offer me a scholarship. So they expected my parents to pick up a major part of that tab. My parents couldn't do that. I knew that. That's why they were pushing me to X. X is a lot cheaper. You need to go there. You can do meteorology later. Well, I persisted, and I persisted. And I came up with an idea of calling Valparaiso, the financial aid department, and telling them I really wanted to go there but couldn't afford it, and that Xavier, one of their big rivals in Midwest regional universities, offered me a large scholarship. I don't know how I came up with that scheme, but it actually worked. Not only did they match Xavier's offer, they ended up beating it when I called them and begged them to let me go there. So again, set a goal, take small steps, overcome challenges. That was a big challenge right there. When I was at Valpo, again, another experience that set me up here. It's amazing how this came into play. I used my experience as the place to skate in the tri-state, DJ, to actually work at the radio station there on campus. I had a coveted time slot, too, at the radio station WVUR. Midnight to 2 a.m. Sunday morning. Boy, I'll tell you, we had some listeners. But that set me up for my next path. One night, I'm working at the radio station by midnight to 2 a.m. shift. And I wasn't used to having visitors in there. I had a friend in there, a buddy, that was kind of helping me out that night. But in walked this group of people, and it was homecoming weekend. And this group came in, and I started talking to this guy, and he said, yeah, I used to be a DJ here. I went to school here. I just wanted to see how the place changed. Looks like it hasn't changed all that much. So, yeah, we could use a little paint on the walls in here. The radio station wasn't the crown jewel of campus, let's put it that way. And he said, it's nice to meet you. What are you studying here? And I said, well, I'm studying to be a meteorologist. I want to work for the National Weather Service someday. I didn't want to work in television at this point still. I wanted to work for the National Weather Service because growing up, when I had watched the meteorologists on TV, most of them weren't meteorologists. They didn't know what they were talking about. So I didn't want to do that job at all. I wanted to be a serious government scientist. Well, this guy said, well, that's kind of funny. I'm actually a meteorologist. I said, no way, really? Where do you work? He's like, I work at a TV station. I'm a meteorologist for the Fox affiliate in Cincinnati, Ohio. You might remember this gentleman. His name was Rich Apuzzo. Rich worked at Fox 19 for many, many years. He's since passed away. But Rich said, you need to come do an internship with me. I said, I don't want to do television. No, I don't want to do television. And he said, no, really, come do an internship with me, help me out for one summer, you'll get some easy college credit for it, and plus, even if you work for the National Weather Service, you need to know what we do on the TV side of things. So, lesson number 6, be willing to take risks. I finally agreed to do this internship with Rich, and to my surprise, I loved every minute of it. I worked about 40 hours per week during that summer, forecasting, making graphics, doing whatever he wanted me to do. And his love for weather was unmatched, his enthusiasm for it, and he really got me excited about beginning my career, not in TV, I still didn't want to do TV. I wanted to work for the National Weather Service. But as you know, seldom do things work out as we plan in life. During the final few years I had at college, there was a hiring freeze in the government. The National Weather Service was not hiring anyone. Complete hiring freeze. There were students, brilliant students, graduating ahead of me that could not get jobs at all. So I needed to pivot quickly here. And lesson number 7 that I have is be flexible. Rich suggested I come back to the station and make a tape of myself doing the weather in front of the big green screen. I had never done that before. So I said, okay, I'll do that. Problem was I didn't have a suit. So I had to go to the mall and get a cheap suit, cheapest one I could afford at that time. Didn't fit quite well, didn't look so good. And my mom, being the helper she is, said, if you're going to be on TV, son, you need makeup. Well, my mom had all girls, or my mom had all boys. She wanted a girl. So she took great pride in going and picking out some makeup for me at the makeup counter, putting it on my face before I went off to go to make this tape with Rich at WXIX. And when she got me the way she thought I should look, she's like, all right, you look great. Go out there and knock him dead. So I went off to the station to make this recording. Never done it before. I was nervous, obviously. Back in those days, and I think they still do, WXIX had what they call working newsroom. So the studio where they do TV and the newsroom are all in the same space. So as I'm doing this, standing in front of this green screen, the entire newsroom is in there, much like this. And they're kind of looking at me and laughing and smirking and kind of making fun of me on the side. So that was kind of hard to sort of concentrate on. But anyway, after I got done doing this, me and the news anchor at the time, Jack Atherton, went back into the edit bay to look at it, and he played back the tape of me doing weather. And the makeup my mom had picked out looked good in person, but under those bright studio lights, I looked like I'd been embalmed. I looked like the Grim Reaper or something. I mean, it was horrible. And Jack's like, yeah, you might want some darker makeup there. It doesn't look so good. All right, Jack, apologize. At any rate, I sent that out to a few stations to apply for jobs, and this guy called me from Rock Island, Illinois. His name was Ken Gullett. Now, Ken said, I got your tape here. John Gum, yeah, I got your tape here, got your application. So looking at it here, honestly, it's not that good. In fact, it's pretty bad. Thinking, where is this conversation going to go? Well, I found out quickly. He's like, yeah, you grew up in the Cincinnati area, I see. He's like, yeah, my ex-wife and kids are there. I used to be a producer at Channel 5. I worked with Norma and Jerry, and now I'm out here in Rock Island. He's like, I don't know. I've just got a good feeling about you. I think you'll get better. He's like, and plus, to be honest, I've offered this job to 5 other people, and they've all turned it down because it pays too little. I said, sign me up. I'll take that job. So I started out in TV, whopping $18,000 a year. Now, a lot of people that are in college don't know this to this day. They want to be on TV, and they don't realize that TV is one of the lowest paying jobs that a college graduate can take initially. So you got to be willing to move to the middle of nowhere, work for peanuts, and work hard to get experience in a lot of cases. My first weekend on the air, we had 3 tornadoes touch down in my viewing area. I was so young and inexperienced, that was a tough situation to handle. Spent a couple years there. Eventually went to North Carolina, worked in New Bern, North Carolina. My first hurricane season there, we were hit by 3 hurricanes. The biggest one, Hurricane Floyd, which was the worst natural disaster still to this date in North Carolina history, flooded out entire sections of the state. That was tough to cover, exhausting. But again, I was being prepared for what was to come. Now, back to that phone call. I'm going to the hospital. I think I'm in labor. Not exactly the words you want to hear when you're sitting in the middle of what's going to likely be the biggest work assignment of your life ever. But those were the words that my wife Jennifer spoke, so I had to deal with it. A lot of pressure right there at that point. Now, thankfully, earlier in the day, I made arrangements for a buddy of mine, who was a meteorologist at our sister station in Charlotte, North Carolina, to fly in to help us. And this guy, his name's Brad. He's an Ohio guy. He's from Akron, actually. And I had taken his job in New Orleans when he got promoted to Charlotte. And I spent some time with him at a weather conference, and we got to know each other. And he had sent me a random email earlier that day, hey, you guys need help? Absolutely. So I went to my boss and said, hey, can we bring in Brad to help us out? That was before I even knew what was going to happen with my wife. And to my surprise, she said, yeah, let's get him in here. So they got him on a plane. Well, as soon as I broke the news to my boss later that night that my wife was in labor, without hesitation, she said, you've got to go to the hospital. You've got to be there. We will get someone else to come in and cover. Now, before I had the opportunity to leave, I had to give the brand new forecast information that came out at 10 o'clock that night. The brand new track, which had New Orleans right in the center of the track. And before I went on the air to give that information, word had spread around the newsroom, around the station, that my wife was in labor. And as they were getting ready to come to me at the top of 10 o'clock, and we probably had everyone in the city watching at this point. The anchors, as they prepare to send it to me, said, "Oh, by the way, John, we hear that your wife is in labor. How crazy is that?" Well, this was the early days of internet streaming, and my in-laws had just found out via the miracle of the internet that their daughter was preparing to give birth as this massive hurricane headed toward New Orleans. They're located in Indiana. So they were watching that via the internet stream at that time. So how did I keep it together with so much personally going on, so much professionally going on? How did I stay composed during this whole thing? You hear stories about professional athletes getting in the zone or just completely playing lights out for whatever reason. And when they're interviewed, they'll often say, the game just slowed down for me. It's like everyone else was moving slower than me. And that's actually what started to happen to me during this situation. Everything slowed down. I took it one problem at a time. I delivered the final track right there, as calm as can be. And when I was done delivering that final track, I received a phone call from Brad. He had just landed at the airport and was going to be at the station within 30 minutes. So I took off. My son Connor was born at 3:20 a.m. 13 years ago today, August 28, 2005. I've got a teenager now. God help me. It was a little over 24 hours before Katrina would make landfall. We evacuated by car with him when he was 16 hours old. I'd been awake for 40 hours straight. I changed my first diaper in the back of an SUV at a BP station in Laurel, Mississippi. That was a memorable experience. My sister-in-law and her husband had come down. They lived in Nashville. They still do. They came down as far as they could and met us in Mississippi. So at that point, he was able to take over driving for me. And we eventually made it to their house in Nashville the next afternoon. Our rental house there in New Orleans has suffered extensive damage from fallen trees, but we were quite lucky. 80% of the people I worked with at WWL-TV, Channel 4, lost everything they had with the floods that followed the storm. And even though these people had lost everything, they kept working. Our team down there would ultimately win a Peabody Award for our coverage. And you heard about what happened there in New Orleans. Some might say, oh, the levees broke. Well, it wasn't really the levees. It was flood walls that lined those canals I talked about, the canals that helped get the water out of the city with the massive pumps. Those flood walls, which line those outflow canals, as they call them, actually failed when the storm surge from Katrina moved into Lake Pontchartrain. So it filled up and put pressure on those walls. For those engineering geeks out there, the walls were not properly designed. The Army Corps of Engineers had overestimated the strength of the soil, so the sheet piling was not driven far enough down into the soil to take all the force of that water. And that's why those canals failed and the city filled with water. The same levees, the earthen levees that surround the city, designed to keep the water out now, because of this, were holding the water in. And over 1,200 people in my viewing area would ultimately die as a direct result of the storm. After the storm, Jen and I decided we needed to reevaluate our priorities, so we quit our jobs down there in order to be closer to family. I had no job prospects, living in my in-laws' basement with a newborn. Talk about scary. But that's where lesson 6 came in again. Be willing to take risks. I took a risk by quitting my job down there. I was working on the #1 morning newscast in the country. That's a job you could just retire from in TV, and in television, that is rare. But I had faith something would work out, and it did when my phone rang a couple of weeks later. Lesson 8, clearly you guys know the importance of networking. You're here today, and that's lesson 8. Network, network, network. And I periodically would attend weather conferences to learn more about meteorology and also to speak with my peers. And in that weather conference I went to back in 2004, it was in Portland, Oregon, I met Brad, but there's another guy I actually met as well. His name was Jude Redfield, and you might have a vague memory of Jude. Jude was the weekend meteorologist at Local 12 for a while. Jude found out what had happened, and we stayed in touch, and he actually gave me a call and said, listen, you might not know this, but nobody knows it really yet. I'm going to Indianapolis for a new job. My job here in Cincinnati is going to be available. I just want to let you know that that job's open. Jude's a Cub Cath guy. He went to Covington Catholic. So he's a local guy, and he was going up to Indy for a better job opportunity. So he let me know that that job was available. And he gave me the contact information for the hiring managers, and they were gullible enough to hire me. So here I am today. I started on TV at Local 12 in October 2005, made a few appearances on TV, and funny things started happening. I started getting calls and letters from people who had evacuated New Orleans, who were up here in this area, whether they had family here or just randomly ended up here. And people, I actually met a family that had lost everything, and they were up here living in a hotel, and it was just one of those things that you would never do because, okay, I'm going to meet these strange people. I don't know who they are, but I met this family, and when this woman saw me, she just burst into tears. She's like, you were the last person in New Orleans that I've seen, and now you're here. This is just crazy. Typically in my business, you only hear from customers, like many businesses, when they're upset about something, and that's kind of how it is with me. We get emails all the time. Social media posts all the time of people that are upset about something. Sometimes they're personal attacks. Usually my way of dealing with it is just kill them with kindness, be as kind as possible. But to get emails and correspondence like this just gave me chills. And that's kind of the next lesson I learned. If you get bad feedback from customers, unless it's a nasty, just horrible personal attack, just result in kind. And that usually results in a complete difference in the customer's attitude, and I see that all the time in my line of work. If somebody posts something nasty on Facebook and I respond to it or something, then usually 9 times out of 10 they'll apologize. I'm sorry, I was just upset. So that's something else that I learned. But back in 2005, that correspondence I received was completely different. And all I got from these people was a huge thank you over and over again. And that's one of the best parts about my job is being able to help people. I love the science of meteorology. I love weather. Being on TV, I could care less about being on television, to be honest. It's just a vehicle that I can, teach people about weather, try to help people, prepare or be safe from the weather. But when I got those emails, that was quite touching. And there's nothing better in my job to get that kind of feedback to where you actually have helped and actually made a difference in someone's life and actually convinced them, in this case, to evacuate a city that was going to ultimately fill with water. Now, something else that I didn't mention was when I was packing up my things in Louisiana, preparing to move back to the Cincinnati area, I came across an old notebook of mine. My mom was one of those moms that saved everything. And she still tries to give me stuff that she has that she's saved forever. Just a few weeks ago, she gave me this big container. I'm like, what is this? She's like, it's your baby clothes. I've got your first rattler in there. I'm like, Mom, I don't want that. It means nothing to me. Mom, you keep it. No, I don't have space for it anymore. I'm like, oh, Mom. Well, in this case, she kept something pretty cool. It was a notebook that I had from the 6th grade. And we had a teacher that used to give us a writing assignment every day. We'd have to write for 15, 20 minutes. She would give us a question on the board to write about, or she would say, just write about whatever you want to write about. Point was, you had to learn how to write, learn how to communicate your thoughts and your feelings, and that's important for kids, and I tell them that all the time. Well, the question on this day was, what is your greatest dream in life? And I wrote in this notebook that I wanted to become a meteorologist someday, because since I was 8, that was kind of the thing I wanted to do. But I remember thinking to myself when I was writing it, well, that's boring just to say that. I need something more. I need more detail in my writing. Teachers always appreciate that. So I thought, well, what is the coolest thing a meteorologist could ever do? And I still have this notebook. I take it around the schools. I wrote in this notebook, I want to be a meteorologist who would help to save millions of people from a horrible hurricane. And I actually got to do that. Isn't that cool? So that's why I believe so strongly in my third lesson. You know, this is the greatest country in the world. The opportunities we have here are limitless. You know, I was just a kid from Claremont County, first-generation college student. If I could achieve my dreams and help other people along the way, then obviously others can most certainly do that. Which brings me to my final lesson here today. And I know a lot of you already do this. Give back. Help others. If you donate just a little of your time, your money, your wisdom, your advice to helping others, it's going to come back to you tenfold. Make no mistake about it, it will. The people who are the most successful are often the most active members of their community, and they do what they can to improve their community and the lives of those around them. It doesn't take much to just encourage a child, perhaps a child like I once was, to tell them that they have value, and in this country they can do anything that they set their dreams out to do, anything that they want to achieve, as long as they work hard and don't give up. And I think that's the most important lesson that I have today. Give back, and I think a lot of you do that. Thank you very much, guys. That's all I have for today. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, John. Wasn't he terrific? Didn't I promise you a good time? I also wanted to just follow up on his last few comments about people who give back, and we're about to see two of those individuals recognized who give back and really make their community a much better place to live. So now moving on to the Hamilton Heritage Award for Outstanding Community Involvement. This is the 17th year for this award. Each year, the recipient is selected by past recipients of the award, and who better to choose the most deserving candidate than recipients of the Heritage Award who exhibit a history of volunteering outside of their job. This award is reserved for those who go above and beyond in their volunteer efforts, and their work contributes to the betterment of our community. We have several past recipients in attendance today. While I call your names, would you please stand and hold your applause until the very end? Joe Ballou, Mike Dingledine, Mary Pat Essman, Dave Lippert, Kathy Klink, Tim Nab, and Cindy Dingledine. Last year's recipient, Cindy Dingledine, will present this award to this year's nominee, Cindy Troken. Cindy?
Well, I'm very, very pleased to be able to present a little background on my good friend Cinnamon Troken. Cinnamon came to live in Hamilton in 1996 after graduating from Case Western Reserve University School of Law and married Darren Troken on Valentine's Day, 1998. She's worked in Hamilton since 2004, a year of change which brought a new house, a new baby, and a new job, all within a 3-month period. Cinnamon lives now with her 2 daughters, Case, 14, and Lena, 11, 2 goats, 2 cows, 2 chickens, and a cat. Darren is the only domesticated male in their 56-acre property, which was recently rezoned as agricultural. Besides working as an estate planning, corporate, and real estate attorney in the law firm of Parrish, Markham, and Troken, and attending to her farm and her family and friends, Cinnamon dedicates time and energy to a multitude of community endeavors. She has served as an elder, trustee, singer, and liturgist at the Presbyterian Church of Hamilton. She is the past president and member of Hamilton Junior Women's League, executive committee member of the Rotary Club of Hamilton, and a member of the board of directors of St. Raphael, and then Franciscan Sisters of the Poor, and then Mercy Health. Hamilton City Schools Business Advisory Council, the Fitton Center for Creative Arts Executive Director Search Committee, New London Hills Swim and Tennis Club Board of Directors, and Operation Pumpkin Planning Committee. Cinnamon currently serves as the Vice President of the Board of Park Commissioners for Metro Parks of Butler County. She has served on the Board of Directors for the Great Miami Valley YMCA for almost 20 years, and was the first female board chairperson in the Y's 100-year history and was involved in the organization's merger with the Middletown area YMCA. The capital campaigns for the East Butler Family YMCA, as well as the collaboration with Atrium Medical Center, which resulted in the construction of Atrium Family YMCA. She is the board chair of the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce and a member of Hamilton Junior Women's League Auxiliary, the Great Miami Rowing Center's Board of Directors, St. Joseph Consolidated Schools PTO, the Hamilton Community Foundation Board of Trustees, Baden High School School Board, One City, One Book Special Event Read-In in Markham Park Committee, and the Butler County Bar Association Ethics Grievance Committee. Finally, she has been blessed to provide legal representation to many other local nonprofits, including Butler County United Way, Center for Family Solutions, the Hamilton Parks Conservancy, the Hamilton Core Fund, Miami Valley Ballet Theater, Hamilton Boys and Girls Club, Caring Like Angels and Heroes, and Lifespan. When Cinnamon is not lawyering or volunteering, she enjoys teaching a 6 a.m. cycling class, which I have never attended, at the Fit and Y, and attending her daughter's swim meets, ballet performances, and sewing, crafting, or reading. Most of all, she is a good friend to me and many other people in this room. Please welcome Cinnamon Trokin.
So the meeting where Dan informed me that I was this year's Heritage Award recipient started out very ominously. So much so that I was literally afraid that I was going to be fired from my volunteer role at the Chamber. So the range of emotions I experienced that day was pretty powerful, but I can honestly say they are nothing compared to those I feel today as I accept these awards in the presence of the community's leaders, my dearest friends, and treasured family members. It is truly an honor and a privilege to stand before you this afternoon. A doctor of theology and popular Christian author once wrote, "Someone someday will ask who I was, and someone someday will answer by saying, well, look at what he did. And what I hope I did was to leave behind a really good answer." You just heard a very comprehensive list of what I have done and continue to do here in our community, but that does not tell you why I do those things. And as grateful as I am to accept this award, it is not for the recognition and the accolades. I do these things because I hope to leave behind a really good answer, a legacy of giving back, and a tradition of involvement that transcends my profession and highlights my passions. At the end of the workday, I can often be heard telling a member of my staff, "Tomorrow is another day." Most of you will recognize this as the iconic final line of the book Gone with the Wind. In just about a decade, which is the approximate running time of the film adaptation, Scarlett O'Hara has killed a man, lost her husband and daughter, and made a dress from a pair of drapes. That is quite a legacy. In the end, after getting dumped by Rhett Butler, Scarlett collapses on the stairs in a heap of tears. How will she ever go on? It's easy. She'll return to the thing she loves the most, her plantation home, Tara. Like many of you, Hamilton is my Tara, and I am committed to telling its story and seeing it grow to be the best it can be. An old Chinese proverb tells us that while the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is now. Numerous individuals in this room have spent the last 20 years planting their trees so that Hamilton can thrive. But if you are not yet among them, let me encourage you to identify your own personal Tara, the thing you love the most and feel passionate about, and plant your tree now. In this way, we can continue Hamilton's heritage of outstanding community involvement for future generations and ensure that when someone someday asks who we were, the answer we leave behind will be a really good one. Thank you.
I just want to say that Cinnamon is my board chair. It's an honor to work with you. And in spite of everything else that she does, no matter when I reach out to her, she always responds right away, so thank you. Now on to Small Business Person of the Year. In selecting the Small Business Person of the Year, the committee looks for a person who has an independently owned and operated business. The business needs to be financially strong and have a history of growth, as well as having demonstrated management or product innovation and successful solutions to business problems. The recipient is also involved in the community and has a reputation for personal integrity and fair business practices. Those in attendance today that have received this award in the past, please stand as I call your name and hold your applause until the end. Neil Cohen, Ron Smith, Gail Underwood, Dave Lippert, Craig Wilkes, Ed Larkin, and Sarah Vallandingham. Sarah Vallandingham, last year's recipient, will present the award to this year's nominee, Kim McGackie.
Kim Schlager McCahey was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, to Joe and Barb Schlager. Kim is the oldest of 5 siblings. Her family moved to Fairfield the same year her father, Joe, started what would prove to be a successful industrial electrical contracting business in Cincinnati. I guess you can say small business is in her DNA. Kim attended Sacred Heart Grade School and Baden High School, and then Moeller Pickens for cosmetology training and licensing from the state of Ohio. Kim and her husband, John, established their roots in Hamilton in 1981. Kim was working downtown Cincinnati at the time at Shillitoe's Glenby Salon. This was a great foundation for her career. When Kim's family started to grow with 3 children, John, Christopher, and Molly, Kim slowed her career down for her family and continued to work part-time locally in Hamilton. Kim reflects that this was a great choice to be with her children when they were growing up. In 2006, the salon in Hamilton that Kim was working at abruptly announced they were closing. Faced with 2 kids in college and nowhere to work, she knew she had to get moving. She knew it was time to start her own business. After being told there was nowhere in Hamilton to open a salon, Kim went searching on her own. 12 hours later, with the help of loyal clients, Kim found 401 Main Street. She looked in the dusty windows of the Barron building that day and saw a vision for a beautiful new salon. In less than 6 weeks, with the help of family and friends, Kim and her business partner transformed the once empty building into a new cornerstone for Main Street. Kim was Main Street before Main Street was cool. 13 years later, and Kim is still working long days at the salon, but she wouldn't have it any other way. She is passionate about mentoring her young stylists and showing them that with hard work, you will be successful. Many things have changed over the years in the salon business, but Kim believes in a team-based atmosphere. This builds a stronger salon family and has been one of her salon's strongest attributes. Personal development in her salon has also been a key to her success. Each new stylist completes a specified training program with Kim to ensure their successful transition. Kim has always believed in giving back to her community. When her kids were young, she volunteered in her children's school and parish, serving as PTO officer, Girl Scout leader, homeroom mother, and CYO coach. The hallmark of her PTO service was the creation of the father-daughter dance. Since opening the Main Look, Kim has been even more active in the community. She is currently an advisor to the Hamilton High School Cosmetology Program and member of Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. She is a longtime member of the Main Street Association, where she has served the past 10 years as secretary. Kim also volunteers with fundraising for the YMCA. She has also recently been appointed to the City of Hamilton Nuisance Board. Kim is pleased to support several organizations in Hamilton, including Parachute, the Fitton Center, River's Edge Concert Series, YMCA, YWCA, Caring Closet, Hamilton City Schools, and Baden High School. But one of Kim's favorite things is her involvement with Little Miss Pumpkin, the pageant that runs during Operation Pumpkin. She helped to start the pageant and is a sponsor and very involved. Kim credits her work ethic and drive to her parents. Her late father, Joseph, was a successful business owner and taught her to give 110% in all you do and treat people with respect and appreciation. She has found this to be the secret to her success. Please join me in honoring our 2018 Small Business Person of the Year, Kim McCahey.
First of all, I'm typically a pretty good speaker, but when it's about me, it's a lot harder. And as my friends know, as I've gotten older, I cry a lot too. We've decided that this must just be part of the hormonal thing. So, first of all, I want to thank everyone who took time out of their day today to be here. I am just totally overwhelmed and feel so blessed to see so many friends and family here with me today. Thank you, Baden High School, for bringing a table. Growing up, I was sharing a story with Cindy and Chuck earlier. I had a teacher, Sister Julia Marie. We called her Bugs. And when we went through the classroom at the end of senior year, what do you want to do? And I said, I think I'm going to go to hair school. And she said, that's probably a good idea. You're not very good at shorthand. And I wasn't, but I wasn't too bad at typing. So it's fun to see a whole table here because, you know, as we get older, we think of some of the things we heard and saw when we were growing up, and that was one memory that came to my mind. Anyway, I'm very honored to be standing here to accept this prestigious award. I want to thank Dan and the Chamber Committee for selecting me, as well as Judy Shelton, longtime friend, for nominating me. I want to thank my salon family for all they bring to the salon daily. They make coming to work every day an adventure, fun, and worthwhile. Behind every good woman is a good team of folks. Most importantly, I want to thank my husband, John, my children, John, Molly, and Chris. Their daily love and support for me is what keeps me going. 13 years ago, my employer told me there was nowhere in Hamilton to relocate his salon, and he was closing. This was about 9:30 on a Wednesday night. I came home and I said to my son, make me a drink, I gotta find a job. This was gonna put 7 stylists and 2 receptionists out of a job. My twins were in college, I needed a place to work, I didn't waste any time. 12 hours later, I was looking in the windows of 401 Main Street. I had a list of places, and that was the last one I got to, and I said, this is it. I envisioned a salon like ours, the way it is today. This beautiful building had been vacant for 3 years. After a lot of love, sweat equity, it came to life. We worked diligently, sanding floors, painting walls, managing contractors. After 6 weeks of renovation, we met all the regulatory state and local requirements. This was rather hard as we were working, keeping our clients going in one business and every weekend we were over at the other business. So on April 4th, 2005, we hung an open for business sign. We were Main Street before Main Street was cool. I'm thankful for the last 13 years full of great customers I have had and the honor to take care of. We've shared our lives together, the good and the bad. I am thankful for I'm thankful for the young women over here that I've mentored and watched grow. It's one of the highlights of my career. I would also like to thank Joshua and his team, Jody, Liz, and Brandon, for their vision of what Hamilton can be. I remember Joshua coming to the early Main Street Area Association meeting talking about making Hamilton a wonderful place to live, work, and play. And he's achieved that. So thank you to the city for making life better for us business folks. Lastly, thanks to all my friends and customers. Many are in this room today. Thank you for all your support of me and our business over the 13 years. We could not have done it without your help and your support. We're here to stay, Hamilton, 13 years down and forever to go. Thank you.
You know, when we moved here to Hamilton and I meet people like Kim, it makes me know that we made the right choice. I want to give a special thanks to the Small Business Person of the Year Selection Committee, who, in addition to myself, is Cinnamon Trocan, Mayor Pat Moeller, Sarah Vallandingham, Terry Bucco, and Ron Smith. I want to also thank our Chamber Centennial Sustaining sponsors, Barclay, Butler Tech, City of Hamilton, Fort Hamilton Hospital, Mercy Health Fairfield Hospital, and StarTech. Thanks once again also to our event sponsors, First Financial Bank and Fort Hamilton Hospital. And also, a special thank you. We have salutations up here for both recipients from the House of Representatives. Special thanks to the Journal News, TV Hamilton, and Inside Out Studio for the beautiful awards. Thank you very much and have a great afternoon.